Well. David, how have you been? I haven't seen you in a week or two.
It's been busy. I hear you've been trotting all over the country doing all sorts of things. Where have you been?
Gosh, I've been in Colorado Springs. I've been in Pennsylvania. Actually, was it Pennsylvania? God, I can't remember. Mohegan Sun, yeah, Pennsylvania. And then Baltimore. And about to just go off possibly to Oklahoma to shoot a movie.
Dang, you're going all over the place. How's everyone doing as far as the sword experience goes? Is like people improving, people learning, people maintaining? How's that all going?
Yeah, no, it's a work in progress for everybody, I think. and you know, we're constantly trying to move things up. And you know, we've got the new membership page up now, which is great because we wanted to sort of offer a whole bunch of different things, which we've been working on for months, including this podcast, and you know, offering different things such as the Lifestyle Essentials magazine and the behind the scenes on Highlander and Film Fight Insights and all those things for people to get while they actually do that membership. We also did the Highlandercon back in August, which was kind of fun online. 26 guests. Can you imagine that?
Oh, nice. Very nice. Who were some of the guests?
Well, there was Musetta Vander, there was Jim Burns and Alexander Vandernoot, and there was all the writers, directors. There was so many. It just went on and on. So it was kind of interesting to see them all after so long.
Yes, no, definitely. I mean, how often do you see people from Highlander? Do you run into them a lot? Are their paths crossed? Do you see them at conventions? Like, how does that? How often do you see these people?
Not often. I mean, you know, it's like anything. You really kind of run into people sometimes at the weirdest places.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And then as far as like training goes, like how are people improving with their sword work? Like, what have you been working on? What have you been training them in? Everything like that. Like,
well, we've really kind of worked on each event now, which is being very specific on the event, so that the event has a story. And we released our Philadelphia event. We released our Boston event. Our Chicago event, a Boston event. And you can see there's a different direction that we're trying to create in every video that people have, and people are kind of liking the idea that they get a little part to play now. But the thing is to be able to shoot it in enough time that I've got. I did Colorado Springs and I went over about an hour.
Yeah,
which you know is difficult because you want to. The balance is to be able to teach people sword work as well as give them the movie side as well.
Yeah,
and make sure that they're getting enough time on both. And not just standing around. I mean, you know, some people look at, you know, when we shoot things, and I shoot maybe 2 or 3 takes on something, then I've got to change the angle on it and do another shot. They're like, "Why are we standing around here?" I'm like, "Well, welcome to the movie industry."
Right, exactly. No, I've done a lot of like, you know, I've been on sets a lot, and it's one of my favorite phrases about Hollywood. It's the phrase "hurry up and wait," because it's, you know, you're just waiting. Then all of a sudden, when it's your turn, like all of a sudden you got to rush and you got to do all this stuff. So it's either you're 0 to 100 real quick.
Yeah, I know. I hear you have a new job too, don't you?
Yes, I'm doing a bunch of social marketing as well for an upcoming Amazon series. I don't know what I can say about it, so I'm going to keep my lips sealed about that one. But it's going to be an exciting one, and it's actually something that could relate to what's going on with the sword experience as well. So I'm going to keep my lips sealed about that. But yeah, no, it's I'm constantly working. You never are working one job when you're in Los Angeles.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of one of those things that, you know, it's like having a producer. As a producer, a lot of the time they have like 3 or 4 or 5 projects, 6 projects, 10 projects sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
That they're working on, and they're working on one, and the funding comes through there, but then something else comes through, and then the funding falls out of that one. And so you can never really tell which one's going to work for you a lot of the time. So it's definitely something where you're if you're honing in only on one thing, it's great sometimes. Sometimes, you know, you have no control,
right,
you know, on stuff, and that's the unfortunate thing. It's like, how can I put it? It's beyond your control.
Right, exactly.
You just have to have a backup plan.
You hear about these projects that always go away. Like, you know, people are talking about them. For whatever reason, the projects just disappear, and then maybe years down the line they'll come back. Maybe they'll never see the light of day ever again. So it helps to, like, if you're focusing on that one project and all of a sudden it gets axed, then what do you do? Where do you go from there?
Yeah, I know, but I mean, sometimes I've seen some actors. People say, I just concentrate on one thing because, if I don't concentrate on that one thing, it won't happen.
Yeah.
That's true. You do want to concentrate on the one thing, but you still got to have a backup plan, because if you don't, it doesn't, I don't know. For some people, I think for the majority of people, it doesn't work. You need to be able to work on, have something that gives you the ability to sort of fall back on.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's kind of what a lot of the people that we talk to on the podcast is. They have, multiple things that they do. Like, of course, stunt people can be actors. They do it all the time, whether they're, front and center actors or whether they may be like some SWAT person that's just off to the side or something like that. But, they're also composers, they're producers, they're, they do like set design. They all have their hands just dipped in so many different pots because A, it either interests you, or B, you got to do it because, you never know when the next acting role is going to come along. So you got to do a producer role, in the meantime.
There was one gentleman on the Highlandercon, Steve Gagan, who's gone on to become a very prolific production designer, and he does a lot of different shows. He did what's the vampire one? Oh gosh, I've forgotten.
True Blood.
No, not True Blood. The current one. I've forgotten the name of it now. Steve, you'll kill me. But it's interesting to see how these guys move on. And he was, saying, I was kind of, I had a career before Highlander, but Highlander definitely helped me move on to something else. And that's like it is in this business. One thing, you can be doing nothing for 2 years, and then suddenly somebody actually hires you for something, and everybody else goes, "Oh yeah, I want to hire him for that." And I want to do this for him. Actually, our guest today, Vincent Gale, who was actually on Highlander. I'll talk about that in a second. But he worked with Harrison Ford, and Harrison Ford, a long time ago, he worked on something called Firewall, and Harrison Ford basically was from what I understand, went back to sort of being a contractor. For a while, early in his career when he wasn't, and so it does change, and all of a sudden something happens, and you get this other job, and that changes things again. So
interesting.
Yeah,
I did not know that.
Yeah, it's kind of that's the beauty of this business. Either you got to be doing waitering, or bartending, or do something else until somebody says, "Okay, I've got you for this role, and now you can actually move on and get a better career, if you like, on what you got." I mean, but it's as they say, it's never easy.
Yes, it is not
easy. But listen, let's get on to our guest today, Vincent Gale. Vincent actually was on Highlander, as I mentioned before. He came on an episode called Blackmail many moons ago, back in the 91, 92. I'm going to look it up now, see if I can actually find it. He was there as a young man, and I hadn't spoken to him since. I mean, this is 20-something years, maybe even more. Actually, it was 1994, so nearly 30 years. 28 years.
Yeah.
I mean, and so, it was great to see him. I mean, he came on for a very small role. He played a guy called Lattimore who got killed, who was trusting of somebody. But he's gone on to do a lot of different things like Van Helsing and The Mountain Between Us, which was another great movie. And he's done loads of stuff, but it comes from a real acting background. He studied originally in Scotland, from what I understand, and he was the guy that his background came from, Royal Academy of Dramatic Arts. Music and Dramatic Arts in Glasgow, Scotland, originally. So he's done a lot of stuff since. But it's an interesting thing he was saying about what it's like to be an actor in this business, doing action stuff, but also what roles you actually are able to accept because of the situation you put yourself in. So So let's. I want to go into this interview now because it was an interesting time. Great man. This is Vincent Gale talking about life, career, and acting. Alrighty, good morning, everybody. How are you this morning? I am fabulous. It's a beautiful day in Los Angeles, and I think it's a great day in Vancouver, where our next guest, Vincent Gale, is calling from. Vincent, good morning.
Good morning, Adrian. It's so great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Lovely. What's it like up there right now? I mean,
well, we've been in a heat wave up here. It's been, pushing 100 for a little while, and it's suddenly cooled down today. We're at a manageable temperature. There's some cloud cover, and I imagine the pool will be a little cooler today than it normally is.
I heard there was a town in Canada that it got to 49 degrees Celsius.
Yeah, that's right. That was Lytton, and then it burned down, the next day.
Yeah, I heard that. That's horrible.
Yeah, absolutely devastating.
And somebody says there's no global warming. I'm not so sure.
I know. I was just talking to my son about that yesterday. I said we are experiencing it right now. We're right in the center of it.
Yeah, you've how many kids do you have?
I just have one.
Just one? Well, that's enough. Trust me. Three.
How old are yours?
Mine's 11, 9, and 1.5.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. You're still right in the thick of it.
You could say that. I mean, this morning, the thing about having kids in the summer is that you actually have to work harder in the summer.
Much harder.
Because you've got to take them to this place and make sure they're out with their friends, or go and take them to a class, or blah, blah. Rather than in school, you can put them in school.
Yeah, exactly.
How did you deal with the pandemic with your son? Was he on Zoom a lot?
Oh, it was difficult. He was on Zoom. He just spent the better part of 15 months just in front of a computer, which was heaven to him and sort of terrifying to his mother and I. But he weathered it. I mean, I think the hardest part about the pandemic was just he's in high school, and it's a time for socialization and contact, and he just missed that entirely. So it's been difficult. We're sort of trying to reintroduce it now, and getting him face to face with friends, and he plays a lot of music, and so he's sort of slowly starting to do that again, face to face with people. So it's time to come out of this thing.
Did he? Because my son, my daughter was okay with it, but my son, just his attention was just, and he's 7, so. 8. Oh God, I keep forgetting. But he's, his attention on it was terrible, and
yeah.
So he did some extra schooling, which helped him extremely. It was amazing. In 3 weeks, he caught up probably 2 months worth of, probably 2-3 months worth of what he'd missed during not paying attention. So,
yeah, right. And then it's incumbent on you to do that work too, right? Because you've got to be sitting over top of the computer, monitoring everything that's going on. Because if you don't, then a lot of work gets missed.
Yes. So for those of you out there that don't have kids yet, think about it, because
very carefully.
Exactly, because oh wow, it's a lot of work, but I tell you what, the rewards, I think, outshine the work. Hopefully, I think the one thing I always look at for kids, and I run this through a lot of things in life, is, I just want my kids to have a respect for people and a respect for what they do and for their parents. And hopefully that's something that I can, pass on to them. I think
100%.
Anything else is just, here's the palette. Decide what you want to do with it. We'll just put you in these directions and you choose. I don't think you can put your I see a lot of parents put their pressure on a kid to play a certain sport or do a certain thing, or and I think every child is different, even in one family.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've always thought that I define myself by this business for 35 years, and then when I started a family, I realized that acting sort of became my side hustle, because what I really wanted to do was parent. So yeah, it changes your priorities, certainly.
It's interesting. The priority from acting to family is different. It happened with me as well. When my kids came along, my focus was not on my career or anything. My focus was, put my kids through college or school.
Yeah.
So it's a totally different thing, and hopefully that happens with everybody. I mean, you taught 35 years. And so let's start with, I mean, obviously you actually were on Highlander in 1994, being strangled as a young man in a flashback sequence. But you've done stuff before that. So, but you were in Vancouver at that point as well, weren't you?
I was in Vancouver then, but prior to that, I had grown up. Well, where are you from in England?
London. I was born and raised in London.
Oh, you're from London. So I was born and raised in Glasgow in Scotland. And that's where I started acting. That's where I kind of got the bug. I went to the Royal Academy of Music and Drama as a kid, and I got a television series there called The Lost Tribe in 1978. And as soon as we finished shooting that series, my family's immigration papers came through, and so we ended up coming to Canada. And so I've never even seen that show, but really? That was the first show that I ever did. And then when my family moved to Canada, I just continued working, and I think they hoped that I would find something else to do during school, but I never did. And I just kept working. And the Highlander job, I think that was sort of one of things got kind of derailed for me when I first moved to Vancouver. I did a big studio film, and I had a small part in it, but it was a big John Frankenheimer film that I got fired from in the first week, and I never fully recovered from that sort of setback, and it took me a few years. And so Highlander and 21 Jump Street and MacGyver, they were all these kind of stepping stones to getting me back into the business after I'd had this issue had occurred.
Let's talk a little bit about that, because I don't think people really appreciate the fact of what it's like to be an actor when you put your heart and soul into something, and when somebody does do something like that, it kind of it's personal. It's not like you're fired from a job. The difference between being an actor is that it's you. Yeah. And I think you take it on yourself that, well, I wasn't good enough, I wasn't smart enough, I wasn't big enough, I wasn't tall enough, I wasn't whatever, which is part of every single casting that happens. You're not the right look, you're not the right accent, you're not the right whatever. And I think that really kind of affects you deeply when something like that happens.
Yeah, 100%. And also, I think I was 19 at that point. And, I had acted before. I had been in companies on the stage and in television and film. And so, and it had always felt like this safe haven. And like you say, suddenly that gets shattered because I was in a machine, right? I was in this $50 million movie making machine that, they don't have time to stop and consider your feelings, because this is a big train that keeps moving. And yeah, it took a long time to kind of have that perspective on it, because you're right, it was very personal at the time, and it's only been over the years, that I've been able to kind of put some perspective to it.
You mentioned Jump Street, which was actually also shot, I think, in Vancouver.
It was,
yeah. Neon Rider, MacGyver. Were these sort of you did two episodes of Neon Rider and MacGyver. Were these all just acting roles? Was there any sort of action that was involved in that, or have you ever done that type of stuff?
Well, there was always action, right? Because in those situations, this was the 80s and the early 90s, and you were always playing a truant kid, or a shoplifter, or someone who steals something. And so you're always running and fighting and jumping and going over chain link fences. And so there's all that stuff was always in play.
Do you think it's changed since back then when you did those types of things with the type of sets that are around today?
I was thinking about this, Adrian, and I think what's different is that the business used to be, although it was young adult oriented, it was adult oriented in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. And then suddenly this youth movement took over, because when I was in my teens acting on television, there, out of a 22 episode season, there'd be 2 seasons where there were young people in, or two episodes where there were young people, and the rest of the episodes were populated by adults. So there wasn't a whole lot of work at that time. You know, you were really scrambling and fighting with all the other young actors to get those few morsels. But now it's been a complete 180, and it's a very young market.
I agree. I think it comes down to the fact, I think the internet has done that because everything's streamed on phones and laptops and devices. That's a young person's thing. That's what they came into. So the market has changed, and therefore the syndicated market, for instance, changed at the beginning of the 2000s. Totally, you know, the bottom fell out the syndicated market. I was actually doing a show in Toronto at the time when the syndicated market just bottomed out, and now all the streaming started, and you know, Netflix started up in the early 2000s, and all that you know, happened. It did change absolutely everything. I think, you know, the internet, as much as we love it today and it's part of our lives, it's so entwined in our lives, has changed a lot of things drastically, and the acting business is one of them because of, you know, it's now selling to a totally different audience.
Yeah. And there are different rules apply. You know, 40 years ago, when you met someone who was in your business or who was a competitor or a peer, you were interested in you know, where they had studied and what teachers they had worked with, and now when young people ask me, you know, what they should do or advice about the business, you know, I think it's such a roll of the dice that, you know, anything could happen. You don't have to go to the National Theatre School or to Lambda or RADA. I mean, it helps, and it's an incredible finishing school and a learning institution, but at the same time, you might just be, you know, they might just like your face. They might just like your look, and I think that's never been more present than it is right now.
Did you continue doing stage work after coming to Vancouver?
Yeah, I've always done stage work. I like to say that I've always done this really unhealthy dance between film and television and stage work. I've never been able to find any traction in either part of the world because I keep jumping out of one to be in another. I'm always so seduced by a great play that I want to do that no matter what the financial repercussions are. And then when I finish that, I got to bop back to television to try to, you know, fill the coffers and pay the rent. And it's this, for me, it's been an inelegant dance.
But you're absolutely correct. I mean, that's a reason a lot of actors do not do stage, is because of the financial aspect of it. It doesn't pay as well. I mean, you're doing a 10-week run or more, and, you know, then there's rehearsals and you're only being paid, you know, a fraction of what you would be paid in a TV show, even for like one episode.
Yeah.
So it really does have a repercussion to it.
It does.
I mean, you did things like The Outer Limits, and I looking at your IMDb page, I noticed there was a shift for you in the late 90s to 2000s when things started changing. You did a lot more TV movies, etc. Was that when you came back into it again?
That was one of the points. Yeah, that was exactly one of the points where I started doing a lot more television. I had done quite a bit of independent film here in Vancouver. That, you know, as independent film rose in prominence in the 90s, there, you know, Canada, in Toronto and Vancouver, there was a very, very rich independent film scene, and so I was involved in that a lot. And out of that, I got some accolades for a film that I did, and so again, that sort of that pushed me again towards. I went towards television just because, you know, there was film, there was stuff, but it was few and far between. So yeah, I popped back into television then and had a nice run, and then a director offered me an irresistible play, and I took that plunge again.
So you've gone backwards and forwards between the two, and I want to go back to your stage training again, because a lot of the time, I mean, I've trained through so many different teachers, whether through voice, through movement, through action, choreography. We talked about a little bit about my background in dance before we started. but you do that when you study at an academy, stage training. A lot of the time,
Yeah.
you do all those things. Was it how long were you at the Royal Academy of Music?
Well, I took classes there for a couple of years between 78 and 80. And so it wasn't an academy program. It was something that we did twice a week, all day Saturday, and then on a Wednesday night. And so I didn't have that immersive. Did you train after school?
No, I trained where I trained was I started in England very, very loosely for a few months before I, again, like you, I was transported to the United States because
Right.
I got an offer to come out here through a friend who says, you want to come and spend some time in LA with me? And I'm like, oh yeah, okay, that's a good idea. And so I then started studying here, but then I'd already studied dance. I'd already studied movement. I understood what it was like to be on stage, and I'd done a one or two small plays here and there. But really, my training was in Los Angeles, and I
Right.
went from one teacher to the next, and they were all very different. This Stanislavski's method, the Meisner technique, the blah blah blah. And you have all the different ways that people go, and it's much like a martial art. People say to me, what martial art should you take? And I say to them, well, what one do you understand the best from the teacher? What can you take? Because you have to take something small from every one of them. And I think the same thing applies when you're in drama school or when you're in doing work, voice work or proscenium arts projection or
Yeah.
movement or character study or script analysis. All those things take time and study. And I think you learn those in drama. So I was curious to see if what you actually were what you studied at in the academy, because I know they run through it all the time. What were the type of things that you were actually working on?
Well, we did a ton of improv because you're trying. I was a child, and so you're trying to. They're trying to incite the imagination of children, and so we would do a lot of improv. There was some scene study, but by and large, it was improv, which was something that I really took to and loved as a child, and then as an adult became absolutely petrified of. Anytime you were in an acting class, it was like, please don't ask me to improvise anything at all.